The Rape of Dinah. Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went out to visit the women of the land, an act that would lead to a deeply disturbing event. Shechem, a Hivite prince, saw her and was immediately infatuated, but instead of courting her, he took her and violated her. After the assault, he claimed to love Dinah and asked his father Hamor to arrange a marriage between them. Jacob remained quiet upon hearing the news, perhaps in shock, while his sons were away in the field. When her brothers returned and learned what happened, they were consumed with rage. They devised a cunning plan by agreeing to the marriage, but only if all the men in Shechem city would be circumcised. On the third day after the procedure, when the men were still in pain, Simeon and Levi stormed the city and killed every male, including Shechem and Hamor. They rescued Dinah and looted the city in vengeance. Jacob was furious with his sons, not necessarily for avenging Dinah, but for making his family vulnerable to retaliation. The story is a brutal portrayal of sexual violence, deceit, and family revenge, raising painful questions about justice and honor in the ancient world. The Conquest of Canaan. When the Israelites reached the Promised Land, they believed God had commanded them to drive out or destroy its inhabitants. Led by Joshua, they attacked fortified cities like Jericho and Ai with absolute force. In the story of Jericho, the walls famously collapsed after the Israelites circled the city for 7 days, and then they rushed in to slaughter every living thing: men, women, children, and animals. This kind of total destruction was referred to as Harem, or Holy War, where nothing could be spared. These stories portray the conquest as a divinely sanctioned campaign to cleanse the land of its corrupt inhabitants. While the Israelites believed they were fulfilling God's will, modern readers often struggle with the immense violence and ethical implications. Scholars have debated whether the events were literal, symbolic, or exaggerated over time. Regardless, the stories have shaped theological understandings of obedience, judgment, and divine justice. The Israelites also spared certain people, like Rahab, showing that mercy could still exist under certain terms. But overall, the Conquest of Canaan is a grim and relentless tale of warfare in the name of faith. The Dismembered Concubine. One of the most horrifying narratives in the Bible begins with a Levite man traveling with his concubine through the territory of Benjamin. They stopped in the town of Gibeah and were taken in by a hospitable old man. That night, a mob of wicked men surrounded the house, demanding that the Levite be brought out so they could abuse him. Instead, the Levite gave them his concubine to protect himself, and she was brutally raped and abused throughout the night. In the morning, she collapsed at the door of the house and died shortly after. The Levite placed her lifeless body on his donkey, took her home, and performed an act both shocking and symbolic. He cut her into 12 pieces and sent them to the 12 tribes of Israel. This gruesome gesture stirred nationwide outrage, prompting a civil war between the tribe of Benjamin and the rest of Israel. Thousands died in the ensuing conflict, and the tribe of Benjamin was nearly wiped out. The story showcases extreme depravity, gendered violence, and the collapse of moral order. It ends not with resolution, but with the haunting line: "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes." The death of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was an outspoken prophet who condemned King Herod for marrying his brother's wife, Herodias, which was against Jewish law. Herod had him arrested, but feared killing him due to John's influence and popularity among the people. During a lavish birthday feast, Herodias' daughter performed a dance that so pleased Herod, he rashly promised her anything she wanted. Under her mother's instruction, the girl asked for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. Though disturbed by the request, Herod honored it to maintain his pride in front of his guests. John was immediately executed in prison, and his severed head was brought to the young girl, who in turn gave it to her mother. This gruesome scene is chilling not just for its violence, but for how casually a life was taken to satisfy pride and revenge. John's followers later buried his body, grieving the loss of their teacher. The story paints a portrait of political corruption, manipulation, and the dangers of unchecked power. Even in death, John remained a symbol of prophetic truth in the face of oppressive authority. Ananias and Sapphira Die. In the early Christian community, believers shared everything they had, creating a system of radical generosity and trust. Ananias and his wife Sapphira sold a piece of land but secretly kept part of the proceeds while claiming to donate the entire amount to the apostles. Peter, filled with discernment, confronted Ananias about lying not just to people but to God. Upon hearing this, Ananias immediately fell to the ground and died on the spot. The young men of the church wrapped up his body and buried him. 3 hours later, Sapphira came in, unaware of what had happened. Peter questioned her, and she repeated the same lie, sealing her fate. She too collapsed and died instantly, and was buried beside her husband. Great fear gripped the entire church and all who heard what happened. The story is often interpreted as a warning about hypocrisy, integrity, and divine judgment in the community of faith. Jael and the tent peg. During the time of the Judges, Israel was under the oppressive rule of Canaanite King Jabin and his commander Sisera. After a major battle in which the Israelite general Barak defeated Sisera's army, Sisera fled on foot and sought refuge in the tent of Jael, the wife of a Canaanite ally. She welcomed him in with kindness, gave him milk to drink, and covered him with a blanket, making him feel safe. Sisera, exhausted from battle, soon fell asleep, trusting that he was out of danger. But as he slept, Jael took a tent peg and a hammer, approached quietly and drove the peg through his temple, pinning his head to the ground and killing him instantly. Her actions were praised by the prophetess Deborah in a triumphant song that declared Jael most blessed of women. This victory was seen as divinely orchestrated, even though it involved deceit and a violent killing in someone's sleep. Jael's boldness disrupted traditional gender roles, as she accomplished what the male warriors had not. The story raises uncomfortable questions about war ethics, treachery, and heroism. While Jael is celebrated, her methods leave modern readers stunned by their brutal finality: the flood and the ark. According to Genesis, humanity had become so corrupt and violent that God regretted creating them and resolved to wipe out all life on earth. Only Noah, a righteous man in his generation, found favor in God's eyes and was instructed to build an ark to survive the coming deluge. As the rains came and the waters rose, everything outside the ark, people, animals, and vegetation, was utterly destroyed. The flood lasted for 40 days and nights, submerging even the highest mountains and erasing nearly all life from the planet. While often portrayed in children's books with animals in pairs, the story is one of mass extinction and divine wrath. It's a tale of both destruction and survival, where Noah and his family became the sole human survivors of a global catastrophe. When the waters receded, Noah offered a sacrifice, and God made a covenant never to destroy the earth by flood again. Yet, the rainbow that symbolized peace came only after unimaginable loss. The flood narrative presents a sobering vision of justice, mercy, and the cost of starting over in a broken world. The killing of the Egyptian firstborns. In the book of Exodus, after Pharaoh repeatedly refused to let the Israelites leave Egypt, God unleashed a series of 10 plagues, each more severe than the last. The final plague was the most devastating: the death of every firstborn male in Egypt, from the son of Pharaoh to the child of a prisoner, and even the firstborn of livestock. To protect the Israelites, God instructed them to mark their doorposts with lamb's blood, so the destroying angel would pass over their homes. That night, a cry of anguish rose throughout Egypt as countless families awoke to find their sons dead. Pharaoh, broken and desperate, finally released the Israelites from slavery. This event became the foundation of the Jewish Passover, a celebration of deliverance and survival. Yet the horror of that night lingers. Innocent children died, not for their own wrongdoing, but as a judgment against a stubborn ruler. The narrative shows God's power and justice, but also leaves us grappling with the collateral cost of divine judgment. It is one of the most sobering moments in the Bible, blending liberation with grief. The slaughter at Mount Carmel. The prophet Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal to a showdown on Mount Carmel to prove whose deity was truly God. Each side prepared a sacrifice, and the God who answered with fire from heaven would be declared real. The prophets of Baal shouted and danced all day without success, even cutting themselves in desperation. Then Elijah prayed, and fire from heaven consumed his sacrifice completely: wood, stones, water, and all. The people witnessing this miraculous event fell prostrate and acknowledged the Lord as God. Elijah then seized the moment and ordered that all 450 prophets of Baal be taken down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered. No trial, no chance to repent, just swift mass execution. While this was seen as a triumph for monotheism and a purge of false worship, it remains a disturbing scene of religious violence. Elijah's zeal for God was undeniable, but the methods raise enduring ethical questions about violence in the name of faith. The story underscores how spiritual fervor can be both inspiring and terrifying when fused with power. The killing of the Amalekites, including infants. In 1 Samuel 15, God commanded King Saul to utterly destroy the Amalekites as punishment for what they had done to Israel centuries earlier. The command was specific and shocking. Every man, woman, child, infant, ox, sheep, camel, and donkey was to be killed. Saul obeyed partially. He killed most of the people but spared King Agag and the best livestock. When the prophet Samuel confronted Saul, he declared that partial obedience was disobedience and pronounced God's rejection of Saul as king. Samuel then personally executed King Agag, hacking him to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. This story is one of the most controversial in the Bible because it commands the extermination of an entire people, including innocent children. Some theologians view it as divine justice, others as a tragic reflection of ancient warfare norms. It forces modern readers to confront uncomfortable realities in Scripture, violence commanded by God, and the ethical tensions it creates. The story is complex and unsettling, reminding us how differently justice was understood in the ancient world. Even Saul's downfall was linked not to cruelty, but to failing to be thorough enough in executing divine wrath. If you thought these Bible stories were dark, wait until you see what's coming next. In our upcoming video, Every Horrifying Book You Were Never Meant to Read, we dive into ancient texts so disturbing they were hidden, banned, or completely erased from history. From forbidden gospels to spine-chilling apocalyptic visions, you won't believe what was left out. Don't miss it.